Okay, good evening, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. This is an interesting time. We are actually having a very interesting topic. We have been discussing about digital disruption, digital transformation, and we wanted to figure, okay, what are we going to talk about in our panel discussion, what most of the stuff we would have covered through today. So we said, okay, let's go back to the roots, let's go back to the ground realities and try and understand where does it all fit. What does exactly digital transformation mean for you and your business? How do we actually figure out where's the next step? How do we figure out to connect the dots? All of those kind of stuff is what we will be discussing with the eminent panelists out here, closing the entire loop from the practitioner's end all the way up to the partner's perspective and seeing how are they closing the entire ecosystem in. So we'll be discussing all of that, and as I keep saying in most of my panel discussions, across different cities, etc., that my job is the easiest. I just need to ask questions. The hardest job is for the panelists to answer. But then I can share a little bit of joy with you a little later when through the panel, maybe I'll open it up to the audience and you'll get the joy of asking them the questions as well. So having said that, let's quickly begin with this one because we have been already been a little late. Andy, let me begin with you. As I said, digital disruption, digital transformation, digitalization, there's lots to this vocabulary which is happening. Well, what exactly it means for a simple IT decision maker or the team, how do they see digital transformation applying back to their business? Where is the basic starting from?
Well, I guess first and foremost is to help any business or help any group or individual understand the possibilities that are there for digital. And I think first and foremost is to really use the opportunity to engage in dialogue with business and decision makers.
Yep.
Right? I think one of the things that is perhaps we're a little bit guilty of within the IT arena is focusing only on ourselves as the answer to a lot of the problems. But as we see from what's happening in digital disruption, it's rarely people in IT who are causing it. It's mostly people with the innovative, creative ideas that see the business models, see the vulnerabilities in those business models, or see the opportunity to exploit data in new and interesting ways, especially at pace that others can't respond to. So I think my advice would be to anybody is to, I think I said it before, right? So stop talking to IT people, right? You really need to go and talk to business people. You need to have a cross-functional view of the problem space, right? And I think it's from that stems the interesting conversations. And from those interesting conversations, you get into, let's say, the agile approach towards exploring business ideas, exploring business opportunities. So my advice would be is really listen, keep an open mind, go wide in terms of the broad understanding of businesses and opportunities. That would be my general advice. Perfect.
Now, funny you said that don't talk to IT. I'll come back and hound you for this one. But Mr. Gumsate, if I can bring you in. Now, and Andy set the context, that this is how we are looking at it, and the disruption is coming from business. Now, when you look at digital transformation, the initiatives what need to be brought about, and if you start to understand how organizations specifically in this part of the world, they are looking at these initiatives, most of them tend to confuse them, from between digitization and digitalization. Most of them tend to be more on the lines of, hey, I need to do an IT project from A to B, and perhaps we are on our way to transforming ourselves, which is incorrect. It's a whole lot of different things, what Andy was actually mentioning. And the idea is that if you're not talking to IT, the business is asking for it, how are you going to have that kind of conversation? What's the role of a decision maker, IT decision maker, or CIO in this paradigm then?
See, what is happening, the organization from which I came from, definitely there is a big drive going on the digitalization. So digitalization is, we can say, about entire process, digital process, making a process a digital one, flow-wise. So in that case, IT person has to work with engineering or R&D person, business person we can say. So what we typically follow is there is a one-to-one relationship or one-to-one counterparts. That kind of relationship we are building. So each department, each vertical, what it is, or maybe horizontal, it depends on the business model. But that person or that head of the person that can work with the corresponding IT person or information technology person. So to make a common decision and to facilitate basically, because they don't have the visibility on what exactly is going on the technology point of view. So during that we can, or the IT person or who is the decision maker, they can guide or they can facilitate that decision making. That kind of organization structure is required.
So stop talking the IT vocabulary in that sense.
Correct.
Perfect. Avinash, if I can bring you in onto this one now, extending the same question to you, and what CIOs have been trying to tell you, and how are you looking at within SAP as well? I mean, you're coming from a business side. How are you looking at this entire paradigm of transforming, using digital tools to actually transform the entire way of doing business?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I feel that the conceptualization of digital transformation invariably happens at the boardroom. So I think there is a very prevalent knowledge and understanding with enterprises, whether they belong to the large size or to the SMEs, that digital and transforming their organization is definitely the path that they need to pursue. So they are all trying to understand whether am I too big, am I too small for me to embark on this journey. So basically what I feel is that what we find from our customers is that once there is a concurrence that at the boardroom level this kind of an initiative has to be driven, it gets all the leadership in that organization come together, which does include the CIO, trying to find a path as to how do you go about doing that transformation. So basically there are various aspects of transformation or digital transformation that the customers are trying to embark upon, and when we say digital transformation, because it's a very, very large subject, as Andy spoke, that there are multiple processes which are working in an organization that involves various functions and groups which are potentially looking and thinking from that perspective. What really needs to happen is that the customers want to identify areas of digitalization in the case of how do they engage with their customers, how do they engage with their suppliers, how do they engage with their employees.
Right.
And these are the three big areas of transformation that people want to undertake. Yes, there is a new area coming up called as IoT, machine learning, etc. That becomes the fourth pillar which the customers have started to think, how do I do digitalization in that area as well.
Correct, correct. Himanshu, a very valid point which Avinash has actually mentioned about extending the organization, right? Now it's, and as he was saying, now it's not the question of big versus small, it's a question of fast versus slow in today's day and age. Look at, what the kind of disruption digital economies has started to brought about in the way conventional business have been approaching it, and was Andy and Mr. Gumsate was mentioning. Now in that sense, what's your view on how perhaps partners can help organizations to actually bring in this, visualize it properly, and then bring the entire extensible organization. It's not just limited to my enterprise. How the stakeholders then start to get impacted, as what Avinash was mentioning. What's the partner's role in that?
So I think in every journey, you, again, as you mentioned, you have to go step by step. I'll give you, example of Intel. When we transformed our whole IT, we didn't change everything overnight. It took us actually years to transform every, application we had, every infrastructure component we had. It took us years. You learn from your experiences. So I'll give you example of a, hybrid cloud kind of a transformation. What steps you should probably take. So when we go and meet customers, we always tend to hear from our customers that, like cloud has become a brand, so should I move to cloud instantly? What are the considerations should I keep in my mind? So I'll say there are different kind of considerations. One is think about your business first, understand your business, how much it will scale in coming years? What are the applications you need to have on-prem? What are the applications you need to have off-prem? Does your business require some regulatory, or compliance, like you cannot keep data off-prem or out of the country. For example, most of the banks, they have a regulation that data cannot be outside the organization. So consider all those business aspects as well as technical aspects. So tomorrow, maybe, one of your competitor or, other organization is doing something. To have the same level of transformation and doing the things in a similar way, you need to have a technical expertise in house. So that's the another aspect. Again, it doesn't happen overnight.
Absolutely.
Then there are some ecosystem considerations. For example, if you are moving from one platform to another, how much the data is related to both the platforms, how much the back-end integration of different applications will happen. So there are different considerations, and again, it's a step-by-step basis. You start with a small change. If it works well, start with a bigger change and then keeps on changing.
Correct. Correct. Andy, interesting point, what Himanshu was mentioning about smaller, quick wins and move on, taste your meal and move on, etc. Now, so Delhi, when we were actually having this panel discussion out there, one of the CIOs I met over there, and he was sharing a story of what he's right now envisioning to do and is struggling with. For example, what he was trying to do, perhaps relook the entire way HRM is dealing with this entire appraisal process of employees out there. He was actually intending to bring in some sort of AI, maybe Watson or whatever else it is, and kind of bring in the engine to constantly monitor different parameters of the employees, and then make that appraisal process very, very measurable and automated in that sense, so that it leaves out ample amount of bandwidth for the managers to take care of the performance stuff, rather than looking at the appraisals and what needs to be done, etc. Take out the human in that. Now, very interesting thought, very interesting vision, but he wasn't sure how to close the loop. He wasn't sure who's going to help him to do this entire, because this might not have been done as extensively. He was looking at partners for help. If something like this is happening, and we are talking about innovation, how partners can then come forward to close the loop and help them do something like this, transform, if you will?
First of all, that's what a great ambition, I think that would get so much votes in the room, is that, let's take HR people out of the HR process and leave it to AI to work out what's really going on. So I mean that's very interesting in its own right. I think the point in terms of the stakeholders is this thing about human-centric, right? The bit that I like about the concept is that I think many people have been victims of the fact that decisions are made in the hierarchy regarding performance that seem to defy logic in some way, and the reality is, how were those decisions arrived at? And the possibility that an AI platform could look at real meritocracy,
right,
could possibly derive the set of algorithms that say, on balance, these people are contributing the most, and therefore it will derive the right answers. For me, that is actually adding great value in putting the individual at the center of decision making. Whereas clearly individual preferences, biases, or whatever come into play, and lots of these things. So I like the idea that we could use AI for real good, and actually it's about empowering the people to deliver better value. I think in terms of how I would go about that, I mean, clearly that's a very big thing, right? And clearly for any significant organization, the impact or implications culturally to putting something like that in place would be pretty amazing, pretty immense. So, I mean, for me, actually, AJ from Stella had a great kind of analogy. I like the fact that when considering digital programs, think about it like a taster menu. You advertise a whole bunch of things, a whole bunch of outcomes that would be interesting, and you can go and sample each of the outcomes. And based on your preference for those outcomes, you could then basically go, okay, I'd like that on the main course. Right. And that's the thing that we go about. So I think there's a good element of democracy about the approach that people would take. And I think that resonates well. Somebody also mentioned the thing about return on investment and risk, so many digital programs fail. So I think my answer to that one was, when you have A to B thinking about digital, you've got the wrong thinking.
Right.
Because the reality is it's not so much about A to B, it's about, in terms of there's a vision to things, and your route to that vision will be many faceted and you'll take many courses. But don't make your steps so big, because very typically, like any big thing, you're going to fail at some degree, right? Or it's going to take too long, or the outcomes are not what you expected. So actually taking those small agile steps, using processes or software development techniques that really get you there, whether it's a Scrum or whatever you want to call it, will get you there in 2 weeks. You can sample what that looks like, what that feels like, shape and move on. I think, for me, that's how I'd advise people going about it.
Perfect, perfect. And you brought about the ROI angle. Mr. Gumsate, very interesting point. Now, we need to, as Andy was saying, Scrum process or whatever, quick wins, quickly move on, measure it and move on. However, the vocabulary used by, say, a head of finance or whoever else would still be deep-rooted into ROI. They will ask you, what's the ROI on this particular project? How do you change that kind of conversation? What do you do with it?
See, for finance or any other departments, they typically see figures or numbers, but at the same time, if we are able to prove them, the efficiency and the effectiveness in the system, what we are going to bring, then that will help actually. See, in most of the cases in our areas, we have almost in 22 countries, working in 22 countries. So earlier we have different systems. Now our CFOs are driving to make it a single system, so it will be easy from the reporting point of view. So in some areas, ROI is almost nothing. No value is there.
Correct.
Because of the system, the old system, the number of people and all those things. But still, we spend months, definitely Fujitsu was also part of that with our team. And we bring all those into the common platform. So, because we can't just think from the ROI point of view, but if CFO or all the decision makers, they have that kind of vision, then definitely, those things will never happen. There will not be an issue.
So just one thing is that, so I use an analogy is like, use the Bruno Mars technique, right? Don't believe me, just watch.
Okay,
Right?
interesting.
Just have a look, see what it means, right? And if you go and sample that, then actually the CFO he won't be asking about ROI, he'll be asking about more and more of that, right? And I think it's just the behavioral attitudes inside businesses that let these things happen, take their own shape.
So feed them a little and get them hooked on, and then you can actually. Perfect, makes sense. This brings me to another angle. What Himanshu, I would like you to help me understand. CIO is working with you, and you have been, Intel from the organization itself, the kind of flavor you have in terms of experience of working with different organizations. Have they come across and asked your help in how do I actually measure all of the success or the failure of these kind of quick wins or whatever? Have they asked you about how do we actually go about convincing our or getting the buy-in with your help?
Yeah, so I think it comes to the same point of measuring ROI in terms of revenue. So I think the P&L statement or the balance sheet is what generally CFO prefers to have in a good way to measure the ROI. But there are a lot of customers who have worked with us in this transformation journey, and they measure ROI in different perspective altogether. So it's not only about how much more money you can make. It's about, like, one of the examples in the telecom, they're working with us. They have transformed everything. Now they see ROI as how easily and how fast they can launch new services. So that's the ROI for them. Moving all those processes from like 3 to 4 months now to few days or even less than a day. That's the ROI for the organization, and it actually goes back to one of the comment I made before in the earlier sessions. You have to work with your workforce as well. So it's like reverse mentoring now. You are asking your employees, especially millennials, what they think about this transformation, how they see value and what value they can actually bring or use from that overall transformation journey, you know, whether it's skill sets or adopting to new technologies, ease of the process, the work environment and everything. So it's not only, I think, the financial or the P&L statement, but it goes the overall work culture within the organization.
Okay.
To add one point here is the ROI. Suppose it is the finance department, for example, and we are working with customers and suppliers. So how we make that customer successful, right? So the way we are working with them, process-wise, whether the sales orders are there, purchase orders are there, or invoices are there. So if we make that system or that processes, that makes the customer delight or customer happy, customer success,
Correct.
then we can't measure ROI there. It is not the ROI from the finance point of view. It is from the customer success point of view.
Correct.
So that ROI is there.
It includes process and people both, not only, you know, maybe the back-end infrastructure. Process and people are like equally important.
Technology is, I think, the most, it's the easiest bit to do.
Yes.
In that sense. Now, having said that, having figured that digital disruption and digital transformation is all about, you know, how can you take those smaller steps, do the quick wins, pivot as fast as possible to figure out what works, look at the impact and move forward. Now, having said that, there is still a real world problem of legacy. Now, I'd like to ask both Mr. Gumsate and Avinash, and I'll begin with you, Avinash, on this one. It makes a lot of sense for startups. It makes a lot of sense for digital economy companies. You know, they're coming in. These are the ones which are, you know, coming in from the left field and becoming your next competitor, and they are able to move really fast. You know, as I was saying, fast versus slow, right? And they are able to pivot whenever they realize this is not the way it's going forward. You know, let's do something else. It becomes very hard for larger organizations across the verticals if they have built on the rich legacy over these years. You know, they can't just lock, stock and barrel, you know, refresh or move on as far as possible. Especially technology should be the easiest bit, and in these kind of scenarios it may just become the bottleneck. How to make these giants nimbler, how to make a giant dance in that sense?
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting question, because I think we on a daily basis are engaged with customers who are not really starting afresh or scratch. They're not startups that we are potentially dealing with on a daily basis, right? So, you know, obviously there is no doubt in my mind that there are startups who are born in the world of digital and they have a high propensity to disrupt.
Correct.
Right, their existing competitors, and we see that happening all the time, and the impact is very, very severe. Okay, so it happens. I think at SAP, you know, we also see this as a big problem because majority of the customers in the country today have implemented an SAP-based ERP system, and people who have implemented the system 10 years back call that as a legacy system. And SAP on the other side has the new digital platform, and the customers have to think how to do the journey from the earlier versions of SAP to the newer versions of digital. So first thing is that you know, what was very, very important is for any organization to take this kind of leap and not get into the same problem what he is trying to solve today of legacy, right, in the future.
Correct.
You need to get building a core from an application standpoint absolutely correct first time, right? I'm not saying that when he did that time it was not right, but I'm just saying in the digital economy or the digital world today, when you're building a core, you need to get it right the first time. I'll give you an example. You know, a couple of years back, we had a customer who walked into the SAP office and he said, I want to implement ERP, right? The customer's turnover was 4 crore rupees.
Okay.
That is all what he was doing in business. So, like good advisors, we told them, you know what, you are too small an organization to really implement SAP. Why don't you run your business with the applications which are possibly homegrown or acquired from smaller organizations, come to a critical mass of 100 crores and then let's have a conversation to implement SAP.
Correct.
And that guy explained to us saying that how he believes that when he is a smaller organization, he want to do it first time right.
Okay.
for him to make sure that his future is fully protected.
Interesting.
But he did not, he chose to take baby steps. He said that let us build the core first. The core typically in any organization is very, very dominant with finance.
Yep.
Right? He said, let me build the core first. And then he built the core, and then over a period of time, using the core that he built, right, on the platform, he was able to do transformation for customers. He was able to do transformation for the suppliers who provide to him as well as for his employees.
Interesting.
Right. So I think it is, in my experience, what we are seeing from the world of SAP, customers are willing to take the leap of faith because they know that they have to be digitally ready for the future. So they are willing to say, I have a legacy system, show me the migration path, right? And more than the migration path, you need to help me transport my data, which is sitting in the existing system into the new world system.
Absolutely.
Right? So I think it is the responsibility of vendors like us to find a path, right? Because reality is that what we lived in the world 10 years back is very different from today and what will look in the future.
Absolutely.
It is a huge responsibility on partners like Fujitsu to come up with robust practices as to how do you migrate this large data in a running organization into a new platform, right, which is digitally ready.
Right.
And then that platform needs to be tuned to help the board to take care of their transformation, what they want to do, whether it is on the customer, supplier, IoT, or for that matter, right?
Sure.
So it's a journey which has to be undertaken, and I think most of the organizations definitely get this. It is not about being small or very large that you cannot embark. The larger the organization, it is going to take longer for you to embark on it. So it is not a journey of overnight which can happen. I think you suggested it takes time, but you have to choose the areas where digital can cause the highest impact for you. And once you have identified that, then you need to go and take your steps of digital transformation in that area.
Fair enough. Perfect. Mr. Gumsate, what's your point of view on this one? You know, how do you actually, Avinash covered a lot of grounds on this one and actually painted a very good picture. But coming in from your previous earlier experiences and the way PTC is also looking at it, it's easier said than done to actually, it's like an old bed, you know, you fall in and it's very difficult to get out, you know, building all your systems and then one day you have to look at how do I build my migration path, etc. It becomes very difficult at that. How do you suggest people should be looking at it?
See, first thing, what any the organization, when they are going to take the decision about transformation, basically if you are thinking about the data transformation in the legacy system, we have to make sure that our existing data is correct. Because most of the time the observation is when they transfer it and they start realizing that it is a problem of data quality. So data quality is very, very important. Most of the time customers feel that their data is correct. They say that yes, we don't have any, absolutely no issue. But somebody has to analyze it. So the data analysis phase is very important. So most of the time we miss that step. So data analysis, then data validation we can say. And if it is really okay, then we can think of how to map and to go to the next system and all those things. So that is most of the time I observe that people made a big mistake to assuming that our data is absolutely correct, and especially HR data, employees, the practice in multiple geographies, the processes are different, practices are different for each simple employee. Looks like it is we have to just hire an employee, but it is not the case. Each one has his own methods. And then it becomes a big challenge to, we see the last minute, those challenges come at the last minute. And then because of we are not able to hire a single employee, then people start making a noise and all those things.
Is it also something to do with, I believe you also shared in your slides earlier in the session today about digital fusion, what you were looking at. Is that what your perspective is when you look at this entire amalgamation of digital with the traditional systems? Digital fusion? Tell us something about that.
So yeah, I think what I mentioned is it's parallel economy. You know, you have the traditional way of doing business. I gave the example of one of the car manufacturers, Toyota. So they used to do a lot of car manufacturing, only car manufacturing. Now they are getting into automotive driving. So that's the example of having both the economies, digital economy and traditional economy together. But I wanted to highlight one more point, which is, within whole scheme of things like edge, data center, network, everything, there is something called virtuous cycle of growth, which we generally refer internally in the Intel. So that means when you have devices or services at the edge, they're sending data back to the data center. And when you have data centers at the back end, you can create more services by having better utilization of the data centers. So it's like to and fro. More data centers, you can create more services or more devices. Again, a lot of new data centers required, obviously via through network and then memory and then FPGAs and all those pieces put together. So yeah, it is a fusion of having both the economies running parallelly.
Correct. Now, Andy, Avinash mentioned about future proofing. That was a critical term. Now, how do I actually build that vision to make sure that not only I need to move from where I was 10 years back and perhaps I might be stuck over there and I need to move today, I need to make sure that 10 years hence and I'll be not again having this problem to deal with. Yeah. Do you think when the boardroom conversations are happening, when those visions are being articulated, it makes a lot of sense to have a partner, say for example like Fujitsu, at that point in time to have that discussion to figure out whether it makes sense to get it right the first time? And second, if I have missed that boat, how do I then, because it might just so happen that my vision is something and you come in and you say, hey, you might be, you may need to course correct, and that becomes another big conversation to have within, I might have just done that exercise and now you ask me to do it again. How do I deal with all of that?
I think that a couple of real important points were made. Avinash and Sanjeev were both saying key things. Is about your core data, your core of your business.
Right.
Is you're always going to have people who understand the core of the business, whether they be operational people, finance people, whatever. Their understanding of the business is the fundamental platform on which you can move. So I think the thing that's important today, I mean, Fujitsu is not unique in this, but we believe that we have some of the best tools around. But if you're talking, what we're talking about in terms of taking people on that journey, right, is two facets: cloud and hybrid IT. Now, the reality is, in order for people to have the confidence to transform their businesses, they cannot let go of the legacy as something that is discarded. They're living with that legacy, and they have to be able to transform it under control. That aspect of balance and control that I mentioned this morning. That thing is that we now have the technology, the software applications within cloud and hybrid IT infrastructure that says, okay, I understand your core business. Okay, that may be SAP ERP at the heart of the business. I have a whole bunch of front-end dealership systems that actually aren't critical to running the day-to-day business, but I want to transform that because I want to engage my customer base in a different way.
Extend the enterprise in that sense.
So you then have a choice, is actually what is the most agile development environment in which to put a dealership organization. It's not necessarily traditional big mainframe, big infrastructure, private data center stuff. So you then start to see opportunities to take each of the application sets that a customer is working on and migrate them into a more agile environment. You're not losing your core data, you're not losing your core control over the processes, but you've started to expose the APIs that run your business. And actually one of the big techniques these days is actually opening up APIs into legacy data.
Correct.
That then allow those data to be exposed and transformed in new domains, which are more agile.
Correct.
And that whole aspect of hybrid cloud is that. And for example, you may have had a very traditional Microsoft environment. People had desktop PCs, or they had laptops, or wherever they're running Office suite of things. Now you have Office 365, right? Now the reality is that I'm sounding like the Microsoft marketing manager here, but yeah, it's a fantastic thing in as much as it can free the organization from a lot of the mundane aspects of running individual devices that interface to Microsoft. And that basic core business interaction then allows people to free up interfaces and free up the way in which they go and approach things. And I think companies that help people on that journey make good technology decisions based on what they need to do with their application landscape, is I think a key part of where technology is really helping people go on a digital journey.
Perfect. I'm having fun, picking these brains of these gentlemen now. I'd like to share it with you guys. We have been talking for almost half an hour, if you haven't noticed. And if you have, then pardon me. Let's open it out. There are mics out there. Just raise your hands. We'll get you the mics. And feel free to ask the panelists the questions. Any questions? Have we been that good that we answered all of your questions? Really? If you have, just raise your hands. Okay, there I see one.
I am Samir Kamath. I am representing Larsen Tobro. One question, we talk about human-centric innovation and digital co-creation, where it requires a complete digital strategy. But when we try to implement a digital strategy, one of the challenges, how do we bring the change management? Because change management is very crucial in this. So if you can tell us about that, what could be how to overcome the challenges which are for change management?
Interesting. Who would like to take a crack at it?
Sure. Let me have a go. I mean, L&T obviously a very huge corporation. I mean, change management ultimately is all about managing behaviors. When you're talking in the digital era, I think, again, I'd emphasize the fact of breaking it down, looking at the cross-functional aspects. I think if we're looking at the impact of digital on any one single individual department or any one single individual customer you may have, I think there are big challenges in that. I think the key aspect of change management in a digital arena is looking at what it is that you're trying to achieve, explaining to people what it is that you're looking to change within that environment, and actually do it in very small steps. That aspect about make a small change, sample it, see the impact on individuals, get them to buy into the process and move it. And I think if you engage people in terms of that change management, the human-centric aspect of, they will then see the other opportunities which will reshape the program. And I think change management has to be dynamic enough to take that feedback loop and take those issues on board. It's a different paradigm. I think the very big change management program, big transformational programs, you often find that you've left a whole swathe of people behind you who haven't really understood the reasons for the impact and change, and therefore it takes decades or years and years to bring them actually up to speed. I think the thing in digital is to explain, show, rapidly prototype. That would certainly be my advice. I mean, I don't think there's any definitive answer on that, but that would certainly be my advice.
Any more questions? There are.
Hi, my name is Kashif from Crimes Office. We basically deal in business office, specifically SAP. My question is for Mr. Avinash. How we motivate our client who's running ECC, SAP ECC, to move on to HANA? Key points or something?
Yeah, this is a very, very simple conversation. We do it all the time. So, I think, if when we engage with an existing SAP customer, he has spent time deriving the maximum value from that platform. So, he has gone through, if I may say, digital -1 automation journey, right, and he has touched most of his business critical processes. So, he is a person who has a list of problems and list of areas where he really believes that the change management or improvement is substantially possible, right? I think what we have gone ahead and done when we built the product S/4HANA, which is the next generation of the platform, we have thought through all the processes which are relevant for 29 industries in the market and where you can actually make the impact. So if you are a healthcare customer, you are a dairy product customer, you are a manufacturing, you are a discrete product, you are a retail customer. For each of these customers, we have really looked into what are the areas where there is a significant change which is required to be undertaken. And the biggest, most important element that has to be seen is that ECC was a code which was written long time back. And it used to run on a platform or a database, and whichever worked the slowest, the software or the platform, it worked at that speed. Right, because it will run, because hardware always have been much faster as compared to applications and to databases. So I think when the customer is evaluating the next generation of platform, he is looking at speed. He is looking at everything that I did in the product earlier should be available in the new product. He is saying that in every process, I need to take it to the next level, which is what the product actually can provide in the current scenario today. And the most important thing is looking at that in the past, if I had an X amount of data, today I have 200 times the data and possibly 5,000 times data to be prepared for, right? With IoT and all of these new things coming up. He needs a platform that has a speed at which it will work, right? And it cannot be the slowest stack becoming the speed. It has to be the fastest stack becoming the speed. So the HANA platform, which has been developed by SAP, is the next generation of platform. And it actually delivers to the requirements what the customers are looking today. And the last thing is that finally, what do people do with the data? And I think at the end of the day, if you cannot make anything out of the data, you have done very good job of replacing ECC with S/4HANA, but you have got no value, right? The value really comes in the digital transformation journey when you implement a platform which gives you an ability to do great amount of analytics on the data, derive what you really want, help you do change management because the user interface of the current platform is 20 times better than what it was in the past so that it can get adopted. And some of these things are very well adequately looked into the platform that we have built. Obviously, the big elephant in the room is to migrate the data which is there in the ECC platform to the S/4HANA. And I think Andy alluded to, there are fantastic tools which partners like Fujitsu have written, by which you can do a very smooth migration of data from the ECC platform to the S/4HANA platform. So it's not a very difficult thing to do. You need to do a little bit of show, because we have to show to the customer the power of the platform. And once he sees, so if you can simulate a scenario to say, okay, 5 things we'll do on the ECC platform and 5 things we'll do on the next new generation platform, how does it run? What speed, what user interface, what GUI, what analytics, and I think the customer really gets convinced what really needs to be done.
If I may just add from a generic point of view, we had been all alluding to this, technology is the easiest bit. I think it's the way you convince them to take those steps and migrate them. I think those will be more of a game changer in that sense.
I just want to add,
Sure.
On the HANA piece, I think we are a proud partner with the SAP on developing HANA on the Xeon platforms. Obviously it started in 2008 and 9 when in-memory data was coming up. So Xeon is the platform, where HANA is being developed today, HANA 2 also, and going in future you will see a lot of collaboration coming from both the companies together, whether it's persistent memory or other innovations that will bring for our customers. Yeah.
In fact, HANA as a platform also has a very huge significant contribution from Fujitsu, right? Because the platform has been built, right, along with Fujitsu, right? Like today we have the digital co-creation, right? And SAP chose to do the next generation of digital platform. We worked with Fujitsu to co-create the platform as well.
Excellent. Okay. I have a couple of minutes. Oh, you have a point of view?
I just need to, while we're all being our mutual marketing managers here, I just need to thank Avinash for mentioning the fact that we did co-create HANA as an infrastructure with SAP, but there you go.
Lovely. I have a couple of minutes on the clock. Any more question? Otherwise, I have a few. Oh, there is one. Okay. Can we get the mic? Can you just raise your hand and we'll get to the mic?
I am Vishal from Fujitsu, and question is probably for Mr. Sanjeev from PTC. Now, Sanjeev, you engage with a lot of vendors, and Fujitsu has been, you have been a customer for Fujitsu for quite some long time. What else do you feel are your expectations from vendors like Fujitsu to do apart from what we are doing already to help PTC or other customers to take you through the digital transformation journey? Where are the areas of improvement?
you just asked my question. I was about to ask. Please.
See, right now, what any organization, not only PTC, all organizations are looking for success, and definitely it is not possible to do any success without partnering with companies, organizations like Fujitsu or any other organization. Important thing is the way right now it is not just the project execution or not just any kind of system implementation that is not expected from the organization. Especially in PTC, what we are looking is how the partnering organization help us to do our business better. So that kind of expertise, that kind of it is not just the that particular relation to that particular project or activity. It is going beyond that. So it is something not. It is a continuous relationship. So that is very important right now. So it is a lifelong relationship, we can say. And so in PTC, what we are doing, I will tell you. It is we have a very big customer success department. Earlier we have number of different departments to take care of each customer needs. For example, technical support, maybe there can be marketing, there can be sales and all those things. So bring all things under one roof now, because customers just want one single phone and his problem gets resolved. What may be the case? So in that case, that customer, even now the organizations are, if suppose they are taking our products, for example, we should know whether that person is really, when that organization is using that product or not. Right now what is happening, suppose somebody is take the SAP product, for example, or any other product. I'm just taking the example because SAP we discuss right now. And if they don't use it, the Fujitsu or who are the other organization on the other part, they will never come to know that why he is not that organization is not using it. So we should go beyond that one. We have to find out why it is not using it, how we can help them to use that product. We have to find out. So that kind of expectations are now from the partners or company organizations like Fujitsu, that it is not just particular specific to that activity, but it is beyond that. That expectations are there right now.
Okay, the timer is telling me the time's up, so, and thankfully the gentleman asked my question, so I don't need to ask any more other questions. But if you look at what we had been discussing for last 45 minutes or so, I think it boils down to the aspects of not only we need to co-create the value, we also perhaps need to take some bandwidth out to co-create the vision as well, because it might help you to, develop a migration path of where you are and then take the transformation journey in those bite-sized components, show the quick wins, get the measurable inputs out there, involve, obviously it needs to start from business, and take the journey and future-proof yourself so that you are there at a place where you can then leapfrog into better tomorrow in that sense. This has been an amazing conversation from my point of view. I'm sure you'd agree. Please give a big round of applause to the panelists out there.